Let there be light. Ah, much better. Lighting can be a challenge for anyone trying to film YouTube videos from home, but it's even more challenging to do it in an 8 by 9 foot space. It's practically an oversized closet despite this room being called a den by the condo association. In this video, I'm going to show you how I get cinematic lighting for my YouTube videos with just 2 lights, and we'll talk about the one space-saving tool that I use to get my lights off the floor. No light stands needed. Cinematic. Adjective. Of, relating to, suggestive of, or suitable for motion pictures or the filming of motion pictures. Definition 2. Filmed and presented as a motion picture. Let's first dispel the idea that cinematic actually means something when it comes to lighting a YouTube video, because this term is thrown around an awful lot without anyone actually defining what it means. Chances are you know it when you see it, but if you're not as experienced in the video world, or you're just getting things off the ground, you probably want to imitate the look that other YouTubers and video people are creating. The best way to get started with cinematic lighting is to truly define the look, and then we'll break it down so that you can imitate it too. I'll also be sure to link to the same equipment that I'm using down below this video so you can grab it for yourself. Once you do achieve the look, you'll probably want the best software out there for recording virtual interviews, podcasts, and more. That's where Riverside, today's sponsor, comes in. Riverside helps me to record interviews with remote guests all from home. More on that in just a little bit. So the look is something you're going to find all over YouTube. Let's break down what it actually is, and then I'll share what it'll take to recreate it. And then finally, I'll reveal my setup for you to swipe and deploy in your home studio. In my opinion, the look is 3 distinct parts. First, it's a shallow depth of field. A shallow depth of field allows you to keep yourself, the subject, in focus, while subtly blurring out the background. This not only imitates what you see in the movies, but it also allows you to keep the viewer focusing on you. It prevents a wandering eye from laser focusing on that one book on your bookshelf that has a funny title, or the blemishes on your wall because you didn't paint it perfectly. A blurred out background tends to be the first sign of a cinematic shot, at least when it comes to YouTube videos. There's of course always a time and a place for the background of a shot to be completely in focus, but we're discussing YouTube videos similar to this one that you're watching right now. The second element to the look is something I call fall-off lighting. Fall-off in the lighting world can be defined as the decline in illumination with distance. In plain terms, it's a visible difference in lighting as it passes across the subject. So one part of the face may be lit a little bit brighter than the other. This also plays into creating depth and giving your face a more 3D looking shape in a 2D video. This is why in many interviews, it's rare that you'll see a light pointing straight on at a subject. Typically, it's off to one side or the other. Now, before I dive into today's content, I want to introduce you to a tool that has completely transformed the way that I record videos online, Riverside.fm. It's like having a professional online video studio at your fingertips. This is Riverside, and when you first log into Riverside, you get to a dashboard where you can see all of your studios. You can create new studios anytime that you wish, and you can label them as you'd like. This was an interview with David. Now, when I've recorded this, I have a side-by-side video, but the beauty of this is I can go further down here and I can see that I have individual video files for each person that was in the recording. Now, the cool part about these recorded files is you can download the high-quality version where you get the option for the raw video or the raw audio. Of course, the video comes with the audio. But then you can also download a backup. Now, the really, really cool part about this is I can go into the Magic Editor and I can edit this video myself right here, and I can even see it using that transcript off to the side here. So now, let me show you how I would go about making a new studio. All I have to do is click on the New Studio button, and I'll name it My Studio. And then lastly, we will either enter the studio or continue with just the setup, and you can enter it later. I'm just going to type in, this is my teleprompter. This is a fun tool they just added. And then I'm going to hit the teleprompter button here, and boom, we now have a teleprompter right on the spot. So if I had a script I needed to read, or if I wanted to share it with that person later down the road, they can go ahead and actually see that teleprompter on their side as well. So if I go back to the Riverside dashboard and I go to this one right here. Now, Magic Clips actually transcribes your video, and so I can go in right here and I can tweak it. So if I need to adjust where it was edited, I can always go back in and get that clip again. I can make a new clip, and you can see our recorded files from right here. So all in all, a very, very cool platform. I love using it. I've done a few recordings with some clients for this. This allows me to record people remotely, and I highly recommend, if you're interested in checking this out, go ahead and click that link down in the description below, because we have a special offer for you to get access to Riverside today. Now, back to the video. The third and final piece to what I'm calling the look is the environment. This might also be referred to as positive and negative space. Positive space is the area of interest in artwork, whereas negative space is the space around the focal point. Seeing as most YouTube videos have a focal point of a talking head, it's important to be intentional about the negative space around that talking head. So to recap, we've got depth of field, Falloff Lighting, and the environment. Let's take a quick peek at some other popular YouTubers to see if they do it too, and what they did to create the look. First up is Caleb of DSLR Video Shooter. In his video, The Perfect Video Key Light Setup, he does a fantastic job of all three. You can see clearly that his background is blurred out slightly, so you can still see what it is, but the items in the back aren't distracting. He even created some artificial lighting on the walls to imitate a reflection through a window. For Falloff, we can clearly see how one side of his face is brighter and one side is darker, but not completely in the dark. He also made sure to light the side of his face that would theoretically be facing the window side, further making this appear to be real. Lastly, he used his environment. By framing himself with a plant and tall C-stands on the left side of his video, he prevents your eyes from drifting outside of the video frame by creating an imaginary wall, so to speak. On the right side of his video, he has a desk at an angle where the lines of the desk lead the viewer's eye directly to his face. Subconsciously, this keeps your attention and focus on him while still creating a crafty looking backdrop. One more example is Armando's channel and his video titled Cinematic Lighting Techniques, Tips, and Tricks. At the very beginning of the video, you can see how his lighting falls flat. There's no fall off on his face. There's a bright computer screen behind him, which is distracting, but he later corrects this and incorporates all three aspects of the look into his video. By the end, you can see his fall off on his face, a blurred out background, and for the environment, he chose some nice bokeh from the lights in the background being blurred. Notice how he didn't need to leverage the lines of a backdrop, but went for a moodier effect by just using light. These three elements get created quite simply if you have the right tools. The blurred out background typically comes down to your camera lens choice. Without going too in depth on lenses, there's really two larger factors that you consider when buying a lens. The first is the focal length, usually represented in millimeters, and the aperture, which is typically measured in f-stops. The aperture is what we're looking for here. The lower the f-stop number, such as f1.2, f1.4, or f2.0, is a number associated with how wide open the aperture is on the lens and how much light is entering the camera. At f1.4, there is more light entering the lens than there is at f2.8. As the aperture becomes wider, letting in more light, the shallow depth in your shot increases. So again, at f1.4, the background will be blurred out a lot more than at f2.8. So if you want to get a blurred out backdrop, look for a lens that can get down to at least f2.8, but ideally f1.4. Next up is the falloff, and this is created by a larger, softer light source that isn't aimed directly straight onto your subject. By placing the lighting at an angle, it will hit the subject more on one side of the face than the other. And finally, the environment, and then I'll show you my setup. The environment is where you can take the most creative liberties. There's no right or wrong as long as the background isn't so distracting that it's preventing the person from paying attention to the content. Some backgrounds I prefer might include some plants or greenery for a splash of color, using additional lights like the ones that you see here, and leveraging the lines of a room or furniture to help guide the eyes. So for my setup, I have limited space. It's practically an oversized closet, and on top of that, some of my space is being used as extra storage since this is where I live. This means that I have even less space to work with. I started out by using a sit-stand desk that has a motor on it so it can move up and down at the press of a button. This desk is from Fezzibo on Amazon, and I'll link to it below. I like it a lot, and it's probably one of the best budget-friendly options when it comes to standing desks. From there, I used a stand from Yolanzi that mounts to my desk with a clamp and has all sorts of arms and attachments, so I can mount a mic overhead, place the camera between my two monitors, and even include my Rode Streamer X. That's my capture device of choice for my home setup since I'm mostly using one camera. But here's the real magic. I use the Very pole from Impact. It's basically a giant tension rod that doesn't damage the walls and suspended it above my desk setup. This way I could get a key light and a hair light on one pole. I use the Aputure F21X, which is a 2x1 flexible LED light panel. It's bicolor, and then the COB60X is my hair light. You can see I've wrapped the power cords along the Very pole, and they come down the wall behind my monitor so they're not visible on camera. Since my camera is off-center, when I position my chair to face the camera, it naturally places the key light off to one side, giving me that fall off that you see in other videos. While the fall off isn't as dramatic as some others have in their videos, it still does a great job of providing me with the texture across my face. With the Sony ZV-E10 camera that I use and a Sigma 16mm f1.4 lens, I get the blurred out background and a few accessories dress it all up. The two lights that you see behind me are simply hanging from 3M command hooks from the ceiling, and they run back along the pole to tie into power that is connected to the light switch. So as soon as I enter the room, I can flip a light switch and the lights turn on. It's really that simple. To get the look, also known as a cinematic shot, we're imitating what other creators do by blurring out the background, leveraging this two-light setup, and dressing up the environment. Don't forget, I've got links down below to everything that I mentioned in this video, and when you grab these items as well, it supports my channel immensely and no additional cost to you. Thanks for tuning in, and if you have any tips or tricks that you deploy in your home setup to get that cinematic look, I want to hear from you down in the comment section below. See you next time.